the Zoom. So welcome everybody. I hope you're connected. We,
Me
we
too.
we were having a little joke this morning about how many architects and lawyers does it take to connect to a Facebook Live. But we got free mindfulness practice this morning for sure with the technology things, but we're really glad to be here. I'm Alice Dommert. I am taking over. Many of you might remember Meg Townsend on our team. So I'm taking over the Prasada Talks. Meg is now, if you want to find her, she is at the Curtis Center, going back to her origin of kind of how she started her professional career. So we miss her. Hi, Meg, if you're watching. So I'm going to try to fill in Meg's shoes for these Prasada Talks as we move forward. So we've had a lot of things going on the last year. Some of you might know that I launched a new business called the Infinite Center, and Jarrod was part of that organization. And we really wanted to have a place where we could really capitalize on doing retreats. And so we did some breathwork retreats last year. We experimented with a bunch of things. And we really got to the end of the year and felt like there really was a much tighter connection between Prasada and between the Infinite Center. So if you're on our email list, you might know that the Infinite Center is now a sister company to Prasada. And we've been really taking the time. We really try to walk the talk. As Jarrod will talk a little bit about, November was his last day being a person who does legal tasks. That's how I like to refer to it.
Yes.
And so we've really been taking the time to sort of see how all the things dovetail into each other. Our big dream is that we someday have a retreat center where we're able to offer breathwork and all sorts of other programs for all kinds of organizations and companies and teams and that kind of thing. So we are trying to get all the things aligned toward that direction. So today, welcome, Jarrod.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So we thought it would make sense to just kick off because it's one of those things where, for those of you who have known me for a while, Prasada is now year 16. I love doing things. I love doing partnering activities and collaborating with people. And so as Jared and I kind of moved into this, the big question was for me when I suddenly showed up at I remember showing up at the Union League and saying I'm not an architect anymore. I have a corporate wellness company. People were like, "What?" And people still ask me that. I will say that a lot of times people will look at my bio and say, "I want to talk to you because this is the strangest thing. How did you go from this to this?" So I think that's one of the sort of compelling things because sometimes, in my case, I was forced to make a change. The economy got really bumpy and really had that kind of pressure. And Jarrod, you've had a different experience, and we all have different experiences when we realize that something is ready for us to change. So first, I just want to check in with you. Like, how does it just feel when you wake up in the morning these days?
Uh,
Different from when you used to wake up in the morning when you were doing legal tasks.
there's some similarities and differences. I'm still my same groggy self. When I first wake up, I have to say the number of days where when I wake up and there isn't some immediate crisis that comes to mind are greatly diminished, if not non-existent. So that's wonderful. I certainly have things that, we're trying to basically run two businesses. There's certainly stresses in life and challenges to doing that, but um, the the main difference is just this kind of constant. I mean, as a lawyer, I was solving problems all the time, so my head was filled with problems. So
Mm.
that's been a nice relief to not have that occupying all of the real estate in my brain.
Yeah, I think so many of us can relate to when you've got a job that just, especially the kind of work that you did, that just had so many details and so many different people involved in the deals, that the
Yeah.
complexity of that was just kind of, whenever you even share a little bit, it was just completely mind-boggling to me.
Mhm. There's a
So,
lot to track, a lot to track.
a lot to
There's
track.
a lot of, I mean, a lot of it was just getting people aligned, going in the right direction. There's some
Mm.
negotiation and some tense moments and all that, but it's really kind of in the type of law I did as a real estate lawyer. we're trying to get to some common goal. And
Mm.
so making sure everyone's kind of on the same track was really my main job.
Yeah, and you've talked in the past about, when you use the word align, and that certainly was kind of what evolved in the blog series that you did. Um, you shared that in a lot of cases your clients there was a learning curve because they were doing deals that were very kind of unique or different, and so the knowledge that you had from all of your experience was really helping inform them. And it's like, I mean, most people in any sort of a professional environment, they're helping educate their clients on what all the options are so that the client can make the educated choices. So that alignment piece is really, just as you were saying that, it's been something, it feels like you're kind of coming full circle back to.
I'm all about alignment. So it only took us 6 minutes to bring up the Enneagram, but here we are. Um, I'm a huge Enneagram fan. I'm a type one, and in particular for type ones, it's all about alignment. So when things are, I tend to notice when things are not aligned.
Mm,
That's one of my a superpower that as a Enneagram type one that I have.
hmm.
And just this strong drive to bring things into alignment. So that probably worked out well in my legal career, like the way I was just describing it, kind of getting like herding people into the same direction. Um, but you know, I did a lot of internal aligning as well. That's
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting to me when I met you that, you started sharing with me, you had this legal tasks that took up a lot of your time and energy, but over on the side, you were still pursuing some of these other things. And in the part one of the blog, you talk about the whisper that wouldn't go away.
yes.
So how did that, can you talk a little bit more about how that kind of started to evolve to where things that we were doing on the side, but you were pretty consistent about continuing to take courses and get more training and do breath work and meditation. So like what was it about that whisper and those practices that kind of kept pushing?
Consistent, maybe it's not the persistent for sure. I've had practices that have ebbed and flowed, and some, I've stuck with for a long time, and some kind of come back years later.
Mm,
But yeah, the consistent part is always having some personal practice that I had, that I tried to prioritize, make time for. The whisper, I mean, we all have voices in our head, the angel and the devil on our shoulder, if not many more cast of characters in there. Um, some voices are a lot louder than others, and you have to really listen to hear the whisper. And the whisper, I think, is usually the voice that you have to try to find.
mhm.
Um, we all have this inner wisdom to us, some inner intelligence that can guide us. But so, how do we tap into that and listen to it with all of the other things that are taking our attention, clogging our minds, the voices in there that are telling us what we should and shouldn't do. So, I'd say the main thing over the last 25 years, I've tried all kinds of meditation. And if there's one benefit I got out of that, it was to not to stop thinking, but to start discerning the different voices and then
Mm.
deciding which one I'm going to listen to.
Yeah, that I think that's the question sometimes of when is it a voice that you should trust? And when is it a voice that that's moving you more toward alignment versus one of the ones that is not so helpful or more might be telling you to do something maybe more drastic in the moment, just to not be feeling the way we're feeling. So how do you, what's your guidance on deciphering?
Um, well, I mean, in the end, everything comes back to the body.
Hmm.
The different voices will have different bodily sensations associated with them. So voices that are louder are like fear driven or judgmental voices. I have a very strong inner critic, very loud. But those louder voices usually come for me anyway, with tension in my body. And
Mm-hmm.
so, or maybe just like a uneasy feeling in my stomach if there's fear there, or tension in my shoulders if I'm just like feeling the stress of things. So learning how to first go to the body and discern, okay, is this a good voice or a bad voice? You know, the whisper, everything feels still and calm inside. And so that's the one I want to make decisions coming from that place rather than the tense and I got the loud critic in my ear. So it's really about tapping in and feeling what's going on in your body.
That makes me think of a coach that I had, and she would just make me sort of sit with the thing and sit
Mhm.
with the thing and sit with the thing and stop telling the story. I think we get very caught into the story. And in your teaching, I'm going to call it teaching about the Enneagram. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Just in terms of, for you, it kind of comes into your body, but there are different sort of centers of intelligence. And so for other people, might it show up in a different way?
Or you want this to become an Enneagram lecture?
It is your
Because
favorite
that's what's
subject.
about to happen. Um, so very high level Enneagram lesson. There's three centers of intelligence: body, heart, and mind. And so there's 9 personality types. So three of them more or less live in each of those three centers of intelligence. A type 1, which I am, is a body type. And so, and it's there's a lot of each type is either externally driven, internally driven, or kind of both. And the 1 is an internal body type. So I like take on a lot of bodily tension, in particular when under stress. Other people, if they're heart types, they might feel a heaviness in their chest if they're under stress, or if they're feeling good, they might feel very open and they'll feel it like coming from their hearts. Or if they're a thinking type, um, under stress, their minds, we all have active minds, but thinking types really can live up here and kind of get lost there.
Mm,
Or when they're feeling good, like they'll notice much more readily that things can be kind of calm up there and clear. So, yeah, we all have access to all of those, but we tend to live in one or the other. And so, kind of learning how to read the signals in each of those centers of intelligence is good practice.
yeah, it's interesting because at the retreats that we did, so we did, I've been part of 25 retreats over the last 3 years. And so it was fascinating to see different groups of people coming together and then different ways that people prepared for their breathwork journey. And I know that your project in Psychedelics Today Vital program was really about how to use the Enneagram. And so the Enneagram has been a great tool for you, but it was just, I would say 80% of the time, people had something, tarot, they had gene keys, they had some framework that was helping them on the path of self discovery so that when things did get really tough that they knew they had a series of tools that they could kind of turn to. So, and I know you started doing Enneagram. How long ago did you start doing Enneagram?
I don't really even remember actually. It's been probably 8 years or so when I first discovered it and started reading about it.
Yeah, because that process of just knowing yourself, and then what I love about the Enneagram is first you're just obsessed. You're obsessed with what your own number is.
Yeah.
That took me a little while. But then you start to become more interested in other people, and it starts to give you, we talk a lot about our what matters conversations, but then we also talk about what matters to us and then what matters in our relationships. So it's
Yeah.
it's like it's also been a part. So when you in the second blog post, you wrote about, okay, so I'm getting close. I'm going to be getting close to the abyss, getting close to the edge of saying that I'm not going to be doing legal tasks anymore, and what are the possibilities without all of the certainties. We certainly don't know exactly what's going to happen, but what was that process like, and how were you able, was it a similar process when you were discerning the whispers to sort of get into that period of what did you call the period, the in between?
Yeah, the in between, navigating the in between was the title to part 2 of the blog. Yes. Yeah, that liminal space. You like the phrase liminal space.
Hmm.
Um, I'd say the process wasn't necessarily different. I'd say during that, the messages of the voices maybe changed a little bit.
Mm.
Because before I made the decision, it was like, should I make the decision or not? And it was easy to sort of feel comfortable where I was. And, you know, it was hard to find the motivation when I have this long career. But then I have this other thing calling me. And so it was a little kind of back and forth. But then once I made the decision, then it was like, oh, what did I just do? You know? So it
Buyer's
was back
remorse.
and yeah, exactly. So a lot of similar sort of back and forth where, yeah, like, wow, that was in some ways a lot of the conversations I had was very freeing. I got a lot of like really positive feedback from people, which was surprising because before I made the decision, I was like, people are going to think I'm insane. Why would you
Mm.
give this up? But 99% of the people I talked to were super supportive, jealous at times, like um, congratulatory to me for my courage to do that. And so that was all great. But then the doubt creeps in because it's like, okay, how am I doing this? I had to literally, there was a process I had to go through to slowly tell people, tell clients, and I want to do it in a orderly way. That's another trait of a type one. Um, and so that went on for months. I mean, you saw saw me every day probably during that period of just that slow unwinding. And so the longer I sat with that, there was definitely moments of discomfort where the doubt just really creeps in. Um, and even if I got doubt from outside,
Mm.
it really was my own doubt, like reflected back to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it felt like this, like, kind of getting through one layer at a time. I feel like the final thing that was really the final barrier I got through was like the financial side. Like have had this lucrative career and what am I going to do after? And so there's a question around that. And so you could let that question dominate my internal narrative or not. And there was just a point where I'm like, well, okay, I'll figure it out. Like, see what happens. And so I got past that, what felt like that final layer. And then I was just kind of ready, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting because we live in a culture from when we're very young that you're taught to be responsible. You're taught to have a plan. You're taught, and we sort of obsess about all the ways that we can optimize time and having all the milestones and knowing what the markers are. And when you kind of stay, when you're in architecture, you know what that is. When you're a lawyer, when you're in law school, you know what that is. Like the infrastructure of the industry does not change. Certainly the little bits and baubles of it does change. So when you step out of that, especially if you're stepping out to start a business or become part of a business, it is extremely unknown. I mean, you have a vision and sort of that line between like, do I trust the vision and take the risk? And I mean, I still talk to people and they're like, you do what? Why do you do that? What? So how, what would you say to people who are watching this and might be thinking about making a change? And especially, now the world feels very rumbly. I'm gonna say rumbly. You know,
Yes.
you and I talk about that the breakdown has to come through the breakthrough. So in a way, it's like the forest fire is here and happening, but after the forest fire, we know that like a lot of new things come about. So what would you say
Yeah.
with your experience about, for people who are like, is it time now to really sort of discern and take my own risk?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that. I think in general, I think I might have said this in one of the blog posts. I want to be careful about not saying everyone should leave their job because it really is that last post and what we were talking about at the beginning, it really is about alignment. And so for me, um, what I was doing didn't feel like it was in alignment.
Mm-hmm.
but there could be people out there that maybe there's some misalignment happening in their life, or they feel like they need some kind of change, but that doesn't mean a total career change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Especially because I do want to, part of what we're doing, I want to help other lawyers. But I don't want to go out there and totally destroy the legal industry by having all lawyers like leave big law, because some people are made for it and some people really probably do feel aligned in that industry. So that's caveat number one. But I do think if you're someone that's feeling the need for change, now's a good time. I mean, things are changing anyway, so take charge of that change. Don't let the change happen to you, but create the change that you want your life to be. So I think a lot of people. This is something we learn in the breath work that we do. People have a tendency to give up their autonomy to others, right? So if you see the world as a scary place and things are changing and you're not sure what to do, it's time to kind of take your authority back, take your autonomy back. So um, yeah, and do what makes sense for you.
Yeah, I love that. So we've talked a little bit, you talked a little bit in the blog post about practices, and it's one of the things that Prasada has really, from day one, we have been about what we call whole being and whole being practices. And this idea that there are a series of things that we do, actions that we take, and those are the things that sort of build the foundation for overall mental, physical, emotional, relational, spiritual health. And I know that I have had a whole variety of practices over time. And so it's been interesting to me. It's sort of like a person who says they're going to be a lifelong exerciser. They're going to do a variety of different things because at different phases or different seasons or different times, you sort of test out different things, but you're committed to that overall goal of I'm going to stay physically fit. So this sort of emotional, spiritual piece of it, what were some of the practices just over these last 2 years that you either had continued or evolved, or new practices that kind of came into your toolbox in this process for you?
Yeah, so many. Like I said, not necessarily consistent, but I'd say maybe a couple of years ago, I um, was reintroduced to some Buddhist meditation. I went to a Enneagram and Buddhism retreat
Mm-hmm.
at Susan Piver's house in Austin, Texas. And my mindfulness journey it started with Buddhism
Mm-hmm.
back in like the late 90s. And I've gone down many paths since then. So a couple years ago, I kind of revisited that, and that was nice. It's super simple. So that got me through a good chunk of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say last year and so during that liminal process for sure, Qigong has been my like go-to.
Mm-hmm.
And what I like about it is it has the same mindfulness components, but you're now using your body. It's very gentle movements, but you're embodying that mindfulness. And so that certainly helps with what I was saying before about like just connecting with your body, what's going on there. Um, and it's a little easier in a way. It's easier. A lot of people say, "Oh, I can't meditate. I'm thinking too much," which
Mm-hmm.
is a attitude that I think can be adjusted. But there's something about qigong, and what I've been doing lately is a qigong style breath work,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just like you can't breathe wrong. I mean, you can, but everyone knows how to breathe. You can like refine your breath and all that stuff, and so that's a really easy way to introduce some mindfulness, get into your body. So I've been doing that quite a bit this last year or so. So, and now I'm doing a training for it's called neurodynamic breath work, and that is a form of transpersonal breath work. It's similar to the kind of breath work that we've had at our infinite center retreats,
Hmm.
and I am about to embark on doing that at least once a week for the next 6 months as part of this training to learn how to facilitate that kind of breath work. So I'm going to do a deep dive, do that once a week, and that's a much more internal experience. Eye shades, music, going inward, accessing parts of your subconscious. So that's I mean, I love that. But so that's gonna be interesting. That's like very embodied for me anyway. When I do that, I really move a lot of energy out of my body, usually, as you have
Yeah.
witnessed.
Yeah, the whole I mean breath work is the one of the things when we really think about like how is Prasada different from other corporate wellness companies, because on the surface it can look like we're doing similar thing. Part of it is just you and I coming from professional backgrounds, that we're really bringing positive psychology, that we're looking at sort of the whole system of any person, but also that we really are committed to bringing all the range of breath work. So sometimes people get a little confused, like what does breath work mean? There's the take 3 breaths, just calm the nervous system. And we do that at the beginning of a lot of our programs. So some of you who have done that might recognize that, all the way over to transpersonal, or sometimes known as holotropic breath work. And so there's all sorts of pieces and options in between. Yogic breath work is called pranayama. But what's so fascinating, and I think we're just so committed to making all these types of breath work more accessible to people as a practice. People don't think, they think about meditation as a practice. They think about yoga as a practice. They think about chanting as a practice. That's one of my Buddhist practice. But this idea of breath work and the breath is the thing that we have control over. And so figuring out how you can use it from just calming the body, emergency brake for the nervous system, all the way till to deep healing for all the sorts of buried things that we have all stored in our bodies, trauma and all sorts of other things.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. I mean, it's simultaneously something that's very conscious and you can control, but it's also something that happens when you're not thinking about it. And so just that dance between conscious and unconscious, and playing around with that and doing different practices can be really interesting.
Yeah.
I've since I've been doing in particular the qigong breath work that I've been doing lately.
Hmm.
I'll do that first thing in the morning, and it is a noticeable difference. I feel like if I didn't do it today, so I'm feeling like a little groggy or whatever. So when I do it, I feel like ready to start the day. As opposed to meditation, I often could calm myself, but it took me probably 5 years to get to the point where I could do that consistently.
Yeah.
But breath work, it's like right there. We can really kind of tap in and help regulate our nervous systems pretty easily.
Yeah, I'm about halfway in a 90-day commitment to chanting, and I have to chant for 27 minutes because I've got a certain number of chants I have to do. And similarly, like when I've been starting my day, now that I'm halfway into it, it just really is a nervous system balancer that just it sets you up for the day to where your mind is kind of ready to go. One thing before we wrap up, you said something about consistent practices. And so it's very interesting to me because, consistency in practices is really important. I mean, am loving having committed to a certain amount of time. You're now in a course where you are committing to doing a practice for a certain amount of time. When I did my yoga teacher training, I did like 31 90-minute classes in a row. And so you can really see when we commit to a practice, like how it really gets embodied. And
Yeah.
then a lot of times we'll do something like that and then we'll pull back and realize, like, no, it was doing something. But we can also change during seasons. We can say the practice might be that I'm running and I'm running for the warm season. And so that's one of the beautiful things that we really want to share with people is what is the tool of breath work? Which one of the many breath work tools is out there for you? And how can you implement that and weave that into your moment in time, for what it is that you need?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I said, I guess I've consistently done something, but the thing I've done has changed over time. And like, yeah, it's just not, I need a change. I need something new. Even if in the breathwork realm, there's all kinds. And feel like I've been doing kind of all of them lately, but I'm kind of doing a deep dive back into breathwork, revisiting that from a couple of years ago. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So As you are on board with Prasada now, what are the things that you're working on that are exciting you?
So many things. I mean, one of the things I'm focused on now is as a former lawyer, I want to take some of our programs and really design one in particular for lawyers and law firms. You know, how to um, whether you're if you're on the management side, like how to have a cohesive team of lawyers, or if you're a practicing lawyer, learning skills like listening to help with your negotiation, just how do you connect with people? Because being a lawyer is it's a people driven business. So like learning these quote unquote soft skills are important. They're not really soft skills. They're like actually the critical thing that you need to learn to be an effective lawyer. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, cool. So as we're wrapping up, we also have a new program called Wholebeing at Work. It's a program that's a whole year program, so very robust for companies who just really need to have something quickly. It's not. It's got a different theme for each sort of month and season. So if that's something you're interested in, let us know. If you'd like to hear more information about some of our upcoming programs, we've got some breath work that's going to be coming up. We've got our retreat that the registration is going to open the 1st of April. We're going to be going back to Portugal to a beautiful place that we went to in 2023. So thank you, Jarrod, for all that you're
Thank
doing.
you.
I will just say it has been fantastic to have someone coming on with a deep dive mind as a nice yin yang to the things that I was already doing. So I'm enjoying having the partnership. So thank you everybody for joining us. We're going to be doing these on a more regular basis, back to our monthly Prasada talks. So thank you so much for being here. And
You
as we say, be well.
be well. It's a state of mind.
Bye bye.